Welcome everybody to another edition of the ATF Radio Show. We were on a hiatus for a couple weeks. Took a little time off for personal, family, and ended the school year with the kids for me. Anyway, so
And family always comes first.
that's right.
This happens to be the last Saturday of June
Oh, you're right. It is.
and the beginning of the first weekend of official summer.
It is the first weekend of summer. Yes, that is true.
What a hot weekend.
And it's been between thunderstorms and tropical storms and high heat advisories for the past 4 or 5 days. It's been an interesting start to summer 2022. I would say that it's been, as the old newscasters of the 80s used to say when I was a kid, it's a scorcher.
No doubt. No
So,
doubt.
Please make sure if you're dipping in the libations as we do on this show, stay hydrated.
I was about to say, stay hydrated.
For every 2 drinks, drink a bottle of water.
Stay moist, my friends. Keep it wet.
All right.
Better yet, just drink water all day. And then drink in between them.
That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it does.
If you drink water all day,
drink water all
you're
day.
going to dilute the alcohol. You're not even going to get to enjoy your alcohol. That's why I say 2-to-1 ratio.
Yeah.
For every 2 drinks, you drink a bottle of water.
Just remember, there's a lot of other ways to hydrate you besides
We're not talking about
IV,
motorsports, and I'm not one of those.
But keep that in mind. So passing out is not fun. Trust me, I've done it.
I mean, it's not the passing out that hurts; it's the waking up.
There you go.
So
If you even do.
as long as you don't wake up in the hospital, you're all right. So what's been on tap? I know both of y'all have seen Top Gun. I still haven't seen it, so I know I have to go out and see that.
Yeah, Top Gun was great. Highly recommended. Better than the original. And for those who didn't see the original, check it out because
You're going to get all the information.
it follows parts of it follow a story that was set in the original, which came back out
Nice.
in 1986, which was directed by Tony Scott, which was
Nice.
interesting because Ridley Scott was his brother, and they dedicated the film Maverick to Tony Scott because back in 2008, something like that, he committed suicide. Jumped off a bridge in the San Francisco bridge and killed himself. Sad.
I was 6 when that movie came out.
For all those who have depressive or suicidal issues, definitely try to get some help. Suicide prevention hotlines, all those sorts of things. But they dedicated the movie to him, and I know Tom Cruise always said he would remake it only if there was a script worthy enough pursuing. And so, it took 36 years,
You got it right.
and he got it right. And what I appreciate about Top Gun Maverick was the fact that, I don't know if you've all heard this, but last year during production, they had a COVID outbreak on set.
No, I didn't hear about that.
And there's and if you know anything about Tom Cruise, he is very, very particular making his movies, and he followed all the COVID protocols that he could. And when there was this outbreak that happened on set that halted production for a month, there's some footage of him just cursing out the entire set and all the production people cursing them out, saying, this is unacceptable, and this is not how I do things, and get your shit together and everything else. So he was so invested and passionate about this that he made sure that once they got back on schedule, they got it done the way he wanted to. So, and I appreciate that, and I also appreciate the fact that he included Val Kilmer in this, because as you know, he's been dealing with the after effects of surgery from throat cancer, and so
That's what that was. I kept wondering what happened to him. I knew something had happened to him.
yeah, there's a Netflix documentary called Val that deals with that. You should check it out. And And in the documentary, he talks about the fact that people thought he and Cruz didn't like each other. He said they've always been
They're
good
really
friends.
good friends. Yeah. That's what I thought.
So to have him back in it, was a nice touch as well. But great film from start to finish, and I hated it ended. It was just that good, and it's rare that a sequel is as good or better than the first. This one was better than the first one.
So my question to Keanu Reeves is, when is Point Break 2 coming out?
Already did technically, but not. It was a reboot.
Yeah, I don't want to see a reboot.
Yeah, that reboot.
I want to see.
Given that Point Break is like one of my favorite movies.
That is probably one of hands down.
That's
one of my favorite.
That's the Keanu Reeves I want back.
Same.
I mean, I love him in John Wick.
Don't get me wrong, I like Wick, but I'm tired of him being John Wick.
But yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, Point Break, he was just so different. Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing. It's
like Bill and Ted.
Yeah.
And I say the same thing with whatchamacallit, Danny Glover and Mel Gibson did a good job of separating. Yeah. From like the Lethal Weapon movies.
Yeah.
Like
that is pretty crazy how they were able to do that.
Just think
Given
about
how big of a franchise that was.
Think about that. Like Mel Gibson. I think what the movie to me that separated him after that was The Patriot. That's when you didn't look at him as the crazy ex-vet cop.
Yes.
I think that movie kind of solidified him as being someone who was just could transform into anything on screen.
I never really thought about him as being in Lethal Weapon. Now that I think about it, I mean, I know that because that's another movie I really like.
Like growing up, if you think about it, it was him and Danny Glover, and it was Arnold Schwarzenegger. For the 80s, 90s.
Yeah.
Like those were the action heroes.
Yeah.
And Bruce Willis.
Yeah. And Will Smith was coming into his own.
Right. Those four actors were
Bruce Willis.
Those were the action heroes.
He was. Bruce Willis was the man on film and on TV.
Oh man.
The only action movie that's a Christmas movie.
The best Christmas movie ever made, other than The Christmas Story, hands down.
Gotta be.
Like I tell people that they're like, Die Hard's not a Christmas movie. I was like, you're a fucking idiot.
Yeah, it sure is.
I was like, did you not see? I was like, first of
all
all,
these other movies about Christmas movies.
Right. I was like, did you see the setting of the movie?
And how many Christmas movies can feature Christmas Comes to Hollis by Run DMC?
And I didn't look.
That shit is classic.
And to go a step further, how many movies can have a Christmas ornament without Christmas colors on it? The biggest ornament I have seen in my life that I love from a movie is a handmade ornament that somebody made out of sheet metal, and they made a duct, and they took a picture of Bruce Willis climbing through the duct and taped it to the back of the ornament so that it looks like he's crawling through the vent coming out, and that was their Christmas ornament. Wow. I was like,
that's clever.
Fucking genius.
That's clever. That is clever.
People are really creative.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I saw that, and then I just saw, we talked about it before we started filming, the Baz Luhrmann film on Elvis, and someone who I actually didn't really follow who Elvis was, unfortunately, until after he passed away, because I was like, oh, what was the hype about him? And then when I saw this old footage of him,
understood,
and then understanding, all right, why does he sound like he sounds? And then going back and getting his backstory, growing up poor, and loving gospel music and R&B, and being close friends with Little Richard and B.B. King, and
that's another series you got to see. You got to see the Little Richard documentary.
Oh, there's a documentary on that?
Oh my God!
Because he lived a hell of a life.
And let me tell you, that documentary does complete justice to him, because even his bandmates were like, we don't want to dress up in these clothes and look like girls and da da da. And he was like, if you want to make this money, you're gonna do what the fuck I tell you to do.
Yeah.
And as kind-hearted and as soft as he was, he commanded respect from everyone.
He did.
And everyone gave it to him. Period. You didn't talk shit to him because you were out. Like, I can find another person.
Yeah.
You can't find another singer like me, but I can find another drummer. I can find another guitarist. And nobody can sing the way I can sing. Yeah. So you're either on my train or you can find another job.
I love watching the parts where the other artists try to sing his songs, but they can't sing it fast enough.
Yeah, he was just
couldn't.
Yeah, he was different, and he was also a talented. He also wrote a lot of music too.
Yeah, a ton of music.
And he just died in 2020. He was 87. He lived a long life.
Yeah,
but
and still looked the same.
He sure is.
still look the same. I remember looking at him in the '80s growing up, in the '90s, in the 2000s.
This is a Full House.
You sure was.
Right. Like, what kind of crossover is that? You know what I mean?
How do
Think
you
about that.
transition to kids? Because I remember I was one of those kids. I was like, oh yeah, look, this Little Richard.
Well, the reason is because he, like so many other artists of that time, their music was adult music, but the words that they used, if you didn't have an adult mind, you didn't understand what they were talking about.
Yeah, Good God with Miss Molly.
Yeah.
I mean, he was singing that with kids.
Yeah.
That was like the original Kids Bop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you think about it, like, just think about back in the day, even going back to the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. Think about, like, the most influential artists. And when you listen to their songs now, as an adult, you're like, oh, shit, this is dirty.
Rocket 88, Tutti Frutti.
Tutti Frutti is one of those ones that's just like, listen to it like, and when we were going through songs for the recital, that was one of the songs that she picked to be playing in the background in the theater. And I'm sitting there, and because we're editing the music and moving it around and stuff, I'm listening to it, and like actually listening to the words. And I'm like, damn. I mean, because he wasn't as forward as like Rick James.
No, he wasn't. He couldn't be during that time, but his stage persona was just over the top, and that's why when Elvis adopted a lot of what he saw from those artists, you know, they were filming him from the waist up, and they were telling him he couldn't move a certain way and everything, and
He was like, but I can.
he's like, but this is who I am. This is what I was exposed to. This is how I feel music.
And I'm happy that movie came out the way that it did, and you saw, and you know, reading reviews on it, it kind of sheds light onto the fact that, because a lot of people looked at Elvis as, oh, he was a culture vulture, he stole this music, he stole this sound, but realistically, that was him to his core.
Yeah, just like what people say about Eminem. Eminem is who he is to his core. He's not
playing a role.
No,
That's
who
literally
he is.
him.
Yeah, and Elvis he always told people in public and in private, his first love was gospel, and then it was R&B, and then he incorporated the rockabilly and the country and everything else. But one of his old bandmates said he could sing any gospel song off memory. They said he just loved gospel. That was his first love. So when you have poor boy from Mississippi, coming up, growing in the hood, being exposed to that, that is who you are going to be.
Exactly.
So it's just one of those things. But it was well done, and I was impressed by the fact that his estate approved it, and that Priscilla saw it. Priscilla Presley said it was the best film she'd ever seen around her husband, and Lisa Marie said the exact same thing. So, but definitely go see it. And they did some nice mixing of his music with the guy who plays him, Austin Butler. They sound so much alike that there was parts where you can tell whose voice they were using. And the soundtrack I downloaded, it's got 36 songs on it. And there's even a song on there by Doja Cat. There's a song on there by there's a song on there by Eminem and CeeLo on the soundtrack.
No, I've heard a few of
Oh,
songs. Wow.
it's a badass soundtrack.
Going into soundtracks,
Yeah.
I finally got into Stranger Things.
Isn't that great?
Finally got into it. I'm halfway through season 4.
They don't miss a beat in the eras. They
And
cover
the
everything.
music.
Yeah.
And I was reading something today on Facebook that one of the women who was very influential in the mid-'80s, her streams of her music that are playing now, she's making $1 million a week on all the platforms combined of her music streaming. So Apple Music, Tidal, all these different music streaming sites that people pay for.
Probably Kate Bush.
Since that's what it
It's
is.
probably Kate Bush because
I
I
couldn't
was going to
remember her
ask one of you guys that I don't ever remember anyone mentioning her as an artist.
No,
I never remember hearing anything.
and
about
like
her.
in season 3, they were heavy into Pat Benatar.
Yes.
Heavy into Pat Benatar. Pat Benatar saw results like that, but not this high. Kate Bush is grossing $1 million a week since the release of season 4.
I first was exposed to Kate Bush through Maxwell. That song, A Woman's Worth, that's a Kate Bush song.
See, I don't know anything of Kate. I don't know any of her.
You know what? You know it, but you don't.
heard
So you do know it. because you've heard remakes and rebrands of her music.
Probably that, but I mean, like
when you hear the original song, then it kicks you into like, wait a minute, I know the words to the song.
She has a very distinctive voice.
Yes.
So, and she's a great songwriter.
When I heard that song, because I remember when the one episode when she got off the bus and she was listening, I was like, yeah, because every song that's on the show, it's like I've heard that song, I know that song, I know that song, but I was like, who is this? And they kept playing. I was like, I'm supposed to know who this person is.
Right.
I should know this
because
person.
she was very, very, very influential, not just in her time period, but going forward. A lot of people sampled her music or rewrote her music and then rebranded it as themselves.
Yeah, but she had a cult. She had one of those cult followings, but yeah.
So, question on this Elvis movie: is this guy that plays Elvis as good as Joaquin Phoenix and Johnny Cash?
Better. He is already being talked about as an Oscar nominee for this.
Okay.
He was that good.
Because Joaquin Phoenix and Johnny Cash
He's right there. Okay. He is as good in this as Jamie Foxx was playing Ray.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, he is dead on it. I mean, he has mannerisms down from when he was young Elvis to older Elvis to around the time Elvis passed. He has it all down. The voice, the moves, the cadence, everything. You got to see the movie.
Now I have to. I mean, that's just.
It is that good.
I mean, the music alone made me want to see it, but like I said,
and the way they
finding out the actual story,
and the way they do some of the remixes of the music, they include there's some house interpretations of it. There's some hip hop interpretations of the music. There's even some songs where they blend the actor's voice with Elvis's voice in the soundtrack, and you can't tell who's who. Oh, yeah. So, and I give the Presley Estate credit. They included some video footage of Elvis that had never been seen before. But it was good. And Tom Hanks played Colonel Tom Parker, which was well. Yeah, he did a good job with that too. But definitely see it. It's well done. And they had a great dude who played B.B. King in the film. They had a dude who played Little Richard in the film, did a great job. They had a woman with an amazing voice who played Rosetta Tharpe in the movie. So, but it was very, very well done. It's different, but it's long. It's 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Ooh.
It's
the only movie I've seen longer than that is The Thin Red Line.
Yeah, it's long.
And that's like 3 hours and 15 or 3 hours and 20 minutes.
Yeah, don't drink a lot of water before you go in.
Yeah, don't get the big soda.
Yeah,
at all.
No.
Let's see what? The Thin Red Line.
Okay, yeah. That was a long movie.
So another series that I discovered on HBO Max is the series about the Baltimore Police Department called We Run This City.
Oh, don't they deal with the Freddie Gray?
So it was before, during, and after.
Okay.
But it's a true depiction of the whole police department was pretty much corrupt. They had gone through 4 commissioners in 8 years or 7 years or something. And during this time, this was when the last commissioner he came on and inherited the problem. Yeah. But he made the most headway as far as trying to get rid of the corruptness that was there.
That's tough because that corruptness in those kind of police departments is so ingrained from the top down.
It's crazy.
In Chicago PD is the same.
And it was crazy because you look at the mayor at the time, the district attorney, like the FBI had to send an independent. They sent their what was the name of the task force? They sent the Civil Liberties Task Force of the FBI to Baltimore to investigate the Baltimore Police Department as a whole. And then they showed this clip of the cities. The series is based on, I think it's 6 to 8 cops. Bergdahl from The Punisher.
Mm-hmm.
He's the main character who rises up in the Baltimore City ranks, and he ends up taking on the leadership role of the Gun Trace Task Force. So their whole job is to take guns and drugs off the street. And not for nothing, he does an amazing job at getting the guns and drugs off the street.
So the slow hustle.
The problem
That was
is,
it.
huh?
The Slow Hustle.
No, it's called We Run the City.
Yeah, that's the name of the show. We Run the City. Yeah.
Oh, okay. We Run the City. Okay.
But the problem is, he had this thing where he said anybody that's over 18 that's carrying a backpack is a drug dealer or a money runner.
Wow.
So a lot of and then they racially profiled and profiled by vehicles and stuff like that. So you even had like people who were honest workers. They don't have bank accounts. They get their check. They go to the check cashing spot. They cash it. They've got $3 grand in their pocket. They were pulling these guys over for nothing, and then taking their money. So they're robbing ordinary citizens at the same time they're robbing these big time drug dealers and gun runners. To the point where when they were doing all these arrests, 95% of the arrests never actually went to trial because the district attorney would go to lockup before they were going into arraignment. They'd review the file and the paperwork, and they had an actual document saying, we'll drop all the charges if you agree not to sue the city for false arrest.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a huge thing.
Yeah.
And then they showed the part about the police slowing down police work and not wanting to do anything because they felt that they were being handicapped and they couldn't do their jobs. So they showed it from both angles. So you got to really understand that the good cops really got handicapped the worst because they wanted to make a difference. But when you protect each other, and that is the one thing that I'll say.
What they call the blue line.
Yeah, that is the one thing I'll say. Like, even in the military, if you're wrong, you're wrong. We don't protect you. If you fuck up and you do something wrong,
You got to be accountable.
you're going to jail. You're going to lose your rank. Something's going to happen. They had the main guy. Him and his partner had over 60 complaints from citizens, to the point where they would get to court and the district attorney refused to call them as witnesses because they knew they were lying. The judge knew it, the prosecutors knew it, and the defense attorneys knew it. And they were like, there was an actual list of cops that were not allowed to swear in to the oath and present evidence at court hearings. And he was at the top of the list because they knew he wasn't telling the truth about how he got his information, if he had an informant. One of the guys they showed, the guy was a drug dealer and was really good at it. He lived out in far outside of the county, outside of the city limits in the county. House was like $2 million. Cars were nice. They found a box in his closet with $450,000. They called the state troopers and turned in 50 grand. 50 grand. They were raiding dope houses, and if they found 20 bricks, they turned in 2 to 5 bricks. Mm-hmm. They had a bail bondsman who was selling the drugs for him. Then during the Freddie Gray riots, they showed a scene with the guy. He's in his uniform. He's patrolling the streets. These 2 kids come out of a riot with 2 55-gallon bag trash bags of drugs, oxycodone, the whole 9. He's in his uniform. He's like, what are y'all doing? Drop that shit. He looks around. Nobody's around. He picks the bags up and puts them in his car. Drives over to the bail bondsman's house and says, here. And the guy's like, this is about $1 million worth of fucking prescription drugs. What do you want me to do with this? He's like, sell the shit. And then it unfolds where everybody realizes but him that they're fucked. Like, they all know that they've been under investigation, but their thing is, it's the feds. It's going to take them 10 years. It took them about a year and a half. Mm-hmm. They tapped their cars, their personal vehicles, their houses, everything. So they finally get caught up on an arrest. They pull this guy over. They know he's got drugs on him. He's a drug addict. They know he's got drugs. Somebody tips him off. As you know, the tip-off comes from the guy sitting in the car. He's sitting in his unmarked car, and he's talking, and the FBI's listening. So they literally get a crew to go out there, and they're videoing them tearing this guy's car apart. And they can't find anything. And so now you hear him standing next to his car on the phone, and he's talking to somebody else, and he's like, hey, they don't have anything on.
Oh, that was the part Was that the part where they ended up wrecking and killing the Oprah?
No, that was a different part.
Damn.
Well, yeah. So they were chasing somebody. They're not allowed to chase within the city limits. The guy takes off. Couldn't find anything in the car. They found nothing. The guy who plants something goes clean. He did it one time. Gets out, becomes a homicide detective. They start to question him, and the guy Berthnall says, "Well, look, there's one thing I know. I didn't plant those drugs. I know who did, but I didn't plant them." He was never going to say who planted them. He still felt like he was innocent. He was like, "I'm doing my job." He never thought that robbing and stealing and killing people was wrong. He was like, "I'm just doing what I'm paid to do." And these guys on top of that were ripping off overtime. They're making $80,000 a year. Their overtime's $85,000 on top of the regular. So you got city cops
Getting dirty money.
who are making 165 grand a year, 170,000, plus all the drug money and all the drugs that they sold on the side. Like it is, when I say an in-depth thing, like it, and I get it in a way, like it makes the city look bad as a whole. The mayors, I mean everything, the whole judicial system, the whole checks and balances. You know,
you can't fix something by trying to pretend like it didn't happen or not make people aware of it, because that's kind of like the political problem when it comes to like police and policing, is that there is this unspoken opinion about police in one community and the opposite one in another community. Because that's just like, I used to hear about people talking about the LAPD, and perspective I always had was that, you know, cops, they were dirty or whatever, but when you don't have, it's one thing when a black guy talks about them being crooked, and there's another thing when an investigation tells you all the crooked things they did.
right?
Yeah.
And that, see, the thing is, until you got it on paper, and then you present it to the people, it's nothing. It's just hearsay.
Because it's just one criminal
Complaining about
and the way they look at it. But one of the guys, he was one of the biggest dope dealers in Baltimore, and he got pulled in by the FBI, and he was like, "Oh, so y'all must not be on my payroll." He said, "Because I pay these guys off all the time." He was like, "I know y'all, y'all found 20 bricks, but I know y'all only gonna turn in 5. That's cool. That'll help my sentence." And the FBI guys are looking at him like, "Nah, all 20 of these bricks are on you. Like, you're done." And he's like, "Nah, call Officer so and so. He'll let you know what the deal is." Because even the drug dealers, they got so used to dealing with corrupt cops that they know, hey, as long as I got enough money, and they work that into their whole marketing and business plan.
As long as they can pay off, they just got to pay it off.
3 to 5%, sometimes 10% of my monthly income, I'm gonna have to use to continue to be able to sell drugs and do whatever I got to do in the next month, because I got to pay everybody off. So it's only 6 episodes. It's a 6-part limited series, but
I've seen a couple episodes.
I gotta see it,
but I haven't actually sat down and watched it.
But I saw that in Chicago. I'll never forget. I don't know if I told you to this once. I was in high school. Me and my boys were going to this park that we normally go to play basketball. And there was this known drug dealer. His car was parked alongside of the park. He was cleaning out his car, just throwing stuff away. He had 2 big clear bags of marijuana just sitting on the hood of his car. Plainclothes detective pulls up. Me and my boys stop. We were like, "Oh, this is really
interesting." Yeah.
So they just started talking, and I hear one of them say, "Oh, we'll just take a bag and we'll let you go." And so we all looked at each other like, "Did he just say that?" And sure enough, his partner took one of the big bags of marijuana, put it in the car, and they drove off. He went back to cleaning out his car with this massive bag of marijuana just sitting on his car. That's how it works. But and going back to movies, I don't know if you saw it. They showed the trailer for Black Adam with The Rock. That looked good. And then inside the theater, they had the poster for Wakanda Forever. That comes out November 11th.
On Veterans Day. Huh. I know what I'm doing.
So looking forward to that too. So first cigar of the day for me, thank you. Cigar Snob happens to be this EP Carillo 10-year anniversary. And I've mentioned this to you before. I don't know much about EP Carillo in terms of as a cigar manufacturer. haven't been exposed to many of those cigars. This is probably only the second or third one that I've tried in my lifetime. I like this a lot, and I know they've got that anniversary box with that amazing humidor for sale for $4.25. We get our discount. And Jason asked me, "Why don't you buy it?" And I said, "Well, I've seen it online for $3.50. I've seen it for less. So if y'all want to come down a bit and throw my discount on there, then that's fine. But it's one of the more beautiful humidors that I've ever seen. So
Yeah, this is one of those cigars that I found in the probably around 2010, 2011. That's when I found EP, and I was kind of shocked because he's been around for a while. But like you said,
is there another one that was just making for a lot of people first?
Part of it, yes, but the other part was just there was so much out there that you kind of get lost in. You think about the big five, and you think about how many cigars they make, and then you think about these are still big manufacturers, but in certain markets, you're not really going to be able to get all the classic cigars because there's just no space in the humidor.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to rotate out a cigar that's selling very well for something that hasn't sold or for something that people have never heard of before. It's very hard to replace a well-selling cigar, even if it's even if you're averaging, let's say, 3 or 4 boxes a week, which is huge anyway in a cigar shop. You got to think about it. If you're guaranteed to sell 4 boxes of one cigar in a week, how do you justify taking that off the shelf to put something on that nobody else has heard of or hasn't smoked before?
Yeah.
It's very hard to do.
And he's a relatively young cat. He's only 71, from Cuba. And I didn't realize he was the brainer behind La Gloria Cubana. And he was a jazz drummer, too, at one point in his career. So you talk about another one. A lot of these cats,
multi-talented,
like Matt Booth, just get into a lot of different things.
And Matt Booth is a Marine vet.
Yeah.
On top of everything else that he's done.
Yeah.
I mean, so you got to look at these guys have lived several lives. Several lives, and they finally get to that point where they find their ultimate love, which ends up being cigars.
Yeah.
Even for Matt Booth, like cigars are his thing. But what's really made him money is his jewelry line. Mm-hmm. Room 101 Jewelry is sold in Macy's, and it's been sold in Macy's for almost 20 years. You think about that. Like if Macy's sells your jewelry,
you got to be the jewelry.
How good are you?
Because they're picky.
All of the athletes, all of the singers, Guy Fieri, Shaq, like Matt Booth has done personalized custom jewelry for these guys. And we're not talking about like the rappers who are getting customized chains and watches by Cigae. We're talking about just one of one pieces of actual art.
Legit.
Just beautiful.
And so I had the pleasure of being invited to the Opus Sex Society event at Grand Cathedral earlier this week. So I went down.
How was that?
That was a blast. So I got to meet and spend some time with Carlito Fuente, and I didn't want to approach him just because it was a small event and people were concerned about people just pushing up on him all the time.
Yeah.
And so as I'm leaving, I walked up to him and I said, I just wanted to say it was nice to see you again. He goes, I met you at the opening last year of Grand Cathedral, because I remember you. He goes, Chicago, right? And I said, yeah. He said, your Bears suck. I said, yes, they do. He said, but you all had Michael Jordan, so it's kind of a trade-off. But he said, good to see you again. And I said, you're looking good. He goes, during COVID, the lockdown, he goes, I gained too much weight, wasn't feeling good about myself. And he said, I started working out and exercising, and he's dropped 30 pounds in the last year. So he looks good. So I got to talk to him for a few minutes. And he asked me, he said, can we take a picture together? And I said, oh, it'd be my honor. So,
and that's the beauty of
nice.
A lot of people would think that, because they're these big time cigar manufacturers and these people who are technically larger than life, that they love to talk
Yeah.
to cigar smokers. They
Yeah.
really do. Because to them, like a magazine can rate your cigar great, a shop can sell your cigar, and it's making a ton of money. But when you get to actually sit down, and even if it's a 2 minute conversation with a regular, average, everyday person who, to get their stress level decreased, for their enjoyment, they smoke your cigar. It's a great thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's one of those things that I learned as a manufacturer is just like, yeah, it's great when those checks come in, but it's even more rewarding for me, like hearing guys like, man, I love your cigar.
Yeah.
Like your cigar is one of my favorites. Like I give it to all my friends. Like that's one of those things that it's just like it makes you happy to do what you do.
Yeah. And he got up and spoke, grabbed the mic, and his whole focus was not about himself. It's about what the Fuente family, for him, means in terms of giving back to people, like that school in the Dominican Republic that he started, that now has provided education for over 100,000 people. Uh, he said that the idea is they're trying to end poverty in the DR, and majority of the people in the DR don't even finish grade school.
Right.
But 80% of the people that go to his school, they finish his grade school, high school, they graduate. 80% go to college and go into fields like law and medicine and architecture. So he's just doing great work. But for him, it was all about family and community. And he talked about how special Angela Yu is to him. He said for her to be so young and for her to be doing what she's doing, he gave her a lot of credit and shouted out her specifically. And so it was just a nice event. Good to see, great food, had live music. But it was a nice event. It was a nice event. It was good to spend some time with somebody like him, coming from the legacy he comes from. You know, Carlos, obviously his dad, and then his grandfather, obviously Arturo. But it was nice to just be able to talk to somebody like that and see him as a real person. And so even when we took the picture, he said, "Get closer to me." He said, we're family." He said, "Get closer, get hugged up." So so we did that, but that was a nice event as well. And then yesterday, I had nothing going on, so I drove down. I drove back down to Tampa yesterday, and even though and I finally went to J.C. Newman, walked around in there. The rollers left early because they had a water main break, and so, but the room was still open, so I walked in there.
It's an amazing sight to see, right?
It is, and one of the managers said, "Oh, because there's a sign that says no public beyond this point." He invited me in, showed me some of, just talked through the process and so forth, and what they did there.
That's why I encourage people who are true cigar smokers.
You gotta go to Tampa.
To go, not even just to Tampa.
This will be released in July.
Oh shit! Like I always say, if you can save the money,
Yeah,
go on one of the cigar safaris.
Yeah,
Where you fly out to these different countries,
look at that.
and you're out there for 3 to 5 days, and you get to take a tour of the fields
Yep.
and the factories.
7 steps to roll.
Yep.
I didn't even realize that. It's a 7-step process.
You get a better understanding and a greater appreciation for the work that goes into what you pay for.
Oh,
Now you see,
Yeah,
you get to see why it costs what it costs
crazy.
to buy a cigar to smoke, because it's not an easy process. It's not a fast process. Yes, tobacco grows relatively fast, but you still have to age it. You still have to cure it. You still have to roll it. Then you have to age it again.
Yep.
Then you have to box it. You have to band it, then box it. Then you sit it down again to rest.
Yeah, he even said all these that you see on this table, at some point, they will be aged for at least a year. And he had the different colors and just talked about what they meant and everything. A lot of it I already knew, but just him talking through the process was just very interesting. And he said we got some of the top rollers that they have there. They roll 90 cigars a day on average,
Which is amazing.
Yeah, and
Because you think about it, that's 4 boxes of cigars almost. If you're counting 25 count boxes.
yeah, and just the quality control that goes in. Learn more about. I never knew J.C. Newman's Newport's Julius Caesar, and then they told me how cigars got their names because they had a reader that would stand up and read them stories while they were rolling back in the day, and that's how. And they read them literature. That's how Romeo and Juliet. Julieta got its name. That's how Monte Cristo got its name.
Yeah, it was because they needed something to entertain them. Because you sit down and roll, even if you roll 5 cigars, it is a slow, painstaking process. So you lose your concentration, and if you lose concentration, guess what? That cigar is a one-off now.
Yeah.
It doesn't match what you've done for the previous cigars.
Yeah.
So it can't go in that box, or
Yeah.
it can't even go. They can't even get that label put on it.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't match.
He even talked about how they separate the long versus the short filler, all that stuff. Because a lot of the short fillers, he said, we just smoke because we know they don't have, to your point, you talked about it, because they don't have that same kind of value. Talk vitolas and everything else. So it was a really nice experience. And then him just bringing me in just to want to talk, with me, I appreciated that as well. Because there was nobody on the floor except us.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you can't make it to a cigar safari, but you can make it to Tampa, by all means, like
He grabbed a sealed bag and opened it up to me and he said, "Put your hands in there." That's what we use to make the caps. Just that moistness and that man. And I smelled it. He's like, "It smells like heaven, doesn't it?" I said, "It sure does."
Yeah. It's an art form. It really is, and that's why, there are machine roll cigars and then there are hand roll cigars.
Yeah.
And even smoking a machine roll cigar, you can tell the difference between a machine roll and a hand roll cigar. And part of it is just the process, but the other part is the love of the craft. The amount of love that they put into every cigar that they roll by hand is phenomenal. And it's something that you can't repeat.
Yeah.
Unless you're that person.
They even have a live feed from Pensa that shows the rolling room. It was so cool. So cool.
It is. It's just probably one of the most beautiful things you get to see.
Yeah.
It really is.
And again, Midwest roots. J.C. Newman moved to Florida from Cleveland in 1954. So, and set up shop. And then there's a whole thing that talks about their relationship with the Fuente family. And that was done on a handshake. That shit does not happen anymore.
No.
A handshake.
Right now, that'd be a 200-page contract.
Oh, yeah, red lines everywhere.
With writers all through.
Yep.
Yeah, because if he didn't follow the handshake, he got shot.
There's that. It's from Cleveland, so you already know the history of Cleveland like that.
And all their rollers are Cuban.
And it's a family.
Yeah.
It's literally the same family, just generation.
Yeah, generation after generation, they pass this.
And everybody goes to school, they get an education, they may even go to college, but it's just in their blood.
Yeah, he said their most experienced roller started rolling cigars when he was 11 years old in Cuba. So
I'm smoking the Series R. I broke that out of the vault today.
La Gloria Cubana?
Yes,
Yeah.
and I gave you one of those USD.
Yeah.
I'm going to smoke my Carrillo next.
Yeah.
But this was my first cigar of the day, so and I am thoroughly enjoying it. I haven't smoked one of these probably since the last time we had one, which was at least 6 to 8 months ago, if not a year ago. Because I don't open this box often. I still have 15 cigars in there. I don't smoke 5 out of that. Well, sorry, no, I smoked 10 because it's 25. There's 25 in that octagon. But I've only altogether I've smoked 10 with you guys included. And it's just one of those cigars that I'm like, it's a day.
I brought back 2 more 10-count packs of the Grand Cathedral House cigars.
Phenomenal cigar.
Brought those back.
Thanks. Shout out to MD. Gave me some Hoy de Monterey Cubans, Churchill at that.
Yeah.
And like I nosed it, and my spidey sense went off, and I was like, oh yeah, this is the truth here. I can't wait to smoke it. It's probably gonna be my cigar for tomorrow. Get up, have my cup of black coffee, sit on the patio with some jazz, and that'll be my morning.
And shout out to the female biological offspring, aka Caitlin.
Yes.
I think
Killer.
I shared it with you, but she's about to next week. She starts MLB event for the rest of the year. She's going to get to travel to games. She's going to get to go to playoffs and World Series games. So
Tampa Bay's in the playoffs.
Tickets, and then after that, she's going to get to cover college basketball, including the NCAA tournament and Final Four. Final Four next year will be in Houston.
Ooh.
So that's a short flight. Let's go.
You already know.
Let's go.
You already know. Cigars on me. So, yeah. What's your first cigar today, Steve?
Earlier today, I had a New World.
AJ.
Classic.
I had that this morning, and right now I'm having this Cavalier, which I've never smoked. But I keep seeing this gold on this leaf before, so I was like, guy outside convinced me.
How is it?
It's very good. Maybe a little more mild for your taste, but it's got that creaminess that I typically look for. It's got a good flavor profile.
And my palate is changing again, as it always does. And I'm realizing, funny enough, for the past 2 weeks, my first cigar of the day has been the Java Mint Box Press.
Every once in a while, you get a taste for that.
And I wanted that. And again, don't get it twisted. It is a medium to medium full cigar, but that mint chocolate, tempers that strength down a little bit. So it's a cigar that you're going to get your little head rush and everything from, but you're going to get a ton of flavor out of it. And the best part about it is that it's a box press, so there's no correction. It auto corrects itself. So if it's burning wrong on one side, it'll even itself out and you don't have an issue. And that's just been it's literally been my go-to cigar. I mean, I've got 3 boxes of them at the house. Because when my girl started smoking at first, she liked the flavors, but she wanted a true cigar. So that's when I started along. And she had said slow down on smoking. But I'm like, this is, and they've been aging for almost 2 years now. So I've been cracking boxes open, and I've smoked half a box already in the past 2 weeks. Because every morning I get up and I get my black cup of Pilon, no sugar or anything. And I just
Straight
sit
up
out.
school.
Yeah.
Oh, and also shout out to Jason when they seemed like they showed me a collection of box press cigars that they make, but before they box press them, they load them into the machine wet.
Mm-hmm.
So cool. So
That's another thing people don't realize about box press cigars. It's a lot more labor intensive than just your regular cylindrical plastic cigar. Yeah. I mean, because you have to make them, and then like you said, they have to be moist, and then you have to put them in that mold, and they have to sit there and then dry a little bit. Yeah. And once they're long enough that they keep the form, then you take them out of the molds, and then you put them in their respective 20 or 25 bundles, tie them up with a piece of string, and then you put them away and let them age.
And I didn't realize this too. They even inventory and keep track of the age of the molds.
Yep.
Man, they just, these production facilities, they are so particular of everything. And he showed me these log sheets, dated names of individuals, just everything.
Every single day.
Everything, every little process is documented.
And they're meticulous because one little mistake or one little mishap can change the complete flavor profile and everything of a cigar.
Yeah.
Like if the mold's off by a little bit, and it's been, let's say they use the same mold for 6 months, and they forget to check it and it goes into month, let's say 8 or 9. That mold might not be the same diameter all the way down. And now you get a different shaped cigar. And how do you correct that? You really can't. Yeah. So you've lost that amount of tobacco.
Yeah. They had a water main break yesterday. They sent the rollers home 2 hours early. And he said, because of that break, those cigars that were affected by that water break, he said that tobacco,
It's done.
It's trash.
Yep.
So never see the light of day.
Yeah, put them in a paper bag. I'll take them.
Hey, we all would. As true cigar smokers, you're like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Give
Yeah,
it to me.
that makes sense.
What
that they have
what quality is for you and what quality is for me are two different things. Even as a manufacturer for myself, you know, for some of my cigars that don't quite meet the mustard of what I want for production to go into every consumer's hands, like even if they're off and they're like, hey, this batch didn't turn out right. You know, there's 500 cigars that they're not for sale.
And
You can't give them to you and say, put them out for retail. I take them because you know what? They're still good cigars. But I appreciate the fact that they're not good enough to put the label on to come out for what we've been doing as far as quality.
yeah.
And quality control is probably one of the bigger things that people don't realize goes into cigars as much as it does. It is it's a very expensive process because you lose a batch of tobacco. I mean, you're talking, you know,
Depending on the size of the
depending on the size of production,
Yeah.
you know, you're talking anywhere from, you know, 500 to 1,000 cigars, all the way up to 10 or 15,000,
Gone. Just like that.
and that's built in.
Yeah.
That's a built-in cost. You know, you're going to lose. You're going to have, for the smaller companies, you're going to have like a 5 to 10% loss sometimes on your batches. That's just what it is. You know, when you get into the bigger manufacturers, and you're looking at, you know, the big scales of they're doing pilons that weigh tons for their aging process of their tobacco, they're not losing as much. But on the smaller scale, it does affect your outcome, and you don't want to put out a subpar quality product because guess what? Then people say, "Oh, this isn't as good as I know it was," and then they find another cigar to smoke. So
Yeah,
you
but
have to take that.
means everything.
Oh yeah.
And I kept the guy's name. His name is Gene, and told him about what we did up here. And so he said to stay in touch with him, and he's going to look internally about the possibility of us being able to do the show at JC.
That would be awesome.
Yeah,
that would be very good.
Yeah. So it's been a good and interesting week between Grand Cathedral, having a chance to talk with Carlito Fuente, visiting JC Newman. So it's been all good. So and
So
then
this will be in Stephen's wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. I've been on a gin kick for the last 2 weeks.
What you been drinking?
I've gone through 4 bottles of Hendrix and 3 bottles of St. Augustine's gin.
Yeah. We got to figure out what Matt's up to now too.
He has another project that's here in Orlando. Mm-hmm. So we talked about it. He says once everything is up and running and fully operational, he didn't even give me a hint as to what it was. So I don't know. I know it's either going to be food, or it's going to be liquor, or it's going to be a combination of both.
Okay.
But I don't know exactly what it is. We talk about once every 2 weeks, but he is like getting into the final steps of soft openings and things like that. So I'm waiting to see and hear exactly what this new project of his is, because he was already on St. Augustine. His girlfriend lives here and works in Orlando, so he was doing an hour-and-a-half commute all the time. So he left to, number one, be closer to family, but he had his own business venture. I mean, he's grown St. Augustine from nothing to a national brand now.
Oh, and I got to meet Carlito introduced him a guy from Cuba by the name of Manny Iriarte, who was a champion swimmer in Cuba. Mm-hmm. He designs the Fuente Hublot watches, and he designs some of their boxes and stuff. So another cool individual. So yeah, the Don Carlos collection, and they had some of those for sale as well. But yeah, it's
not just it's not just about cigars. It goes all the way into the accessories as far as cutters, lighters, everything.
Yeah, it's open sex society.
I mean, even if if you look at the box production, you have boxes that cost anywhere from $2 all the way to $15 or $20, and that's just to put the cigars in.
Yeah.
Just the design of what it costs to design a box. You've got 15 different prototypes. Shit, that's massive. You've got 15 different prototypes of a box, and you whittle it down to one, depending on the type of artwork you like, the font you like, the color of the box, whether it's stained, whether it's not, whether it's a glossy finish, whether it's a raw product, whether there's fabric on the outside. Just it's a lot that goes into it that people I think kind of miss. They just think, oh, cigar box is a cigar box, but I like that. It's all black belt.
Yeah, that's nice watch. Too big for my taste, man. I like the watch itself.
So yeah, I've been heavily on the gin side, and then I don't like tonic water with quinine in it.
Yeah.
So that's been my thing. Like, you have to get two separate tonic waters because the quinine just, for me, it doesn't. My palate doesn't take it well, so I don't enjoy a gin and tonic, a classic gin and tonic. For me, I'd rather just give me a gin with seltzer water and a slice of lime. Because a lot of the tonic waters have that quinine, and it gives it a bitter taste. It offsets the juniper berries. Most people, they love that juniper berry taste with the quinine and the tonic water, and it just puts the drink on a whole nother level. For me, I'm just one of those people one of the few, because obviously people enjoy it, but I'm just one of the few that my palate just does not agree with. So, but yeah, I thought that was interesting. I was like, man, I can't wait to tell Steve what I've been drinking, because we haven't had the show in almost a month. So
Yeah, it's gonna be good.
it's been a journey. But that and
And I've been invited lately in the Don Julio tequila.
oh, of course. And then that my Bro Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
I've gone through almost a half a case of Bro Brothers. And I haven't even been making old fashions or anything with it. I've just been drinking it neat.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one of those ones that I think
Neat is the way.
it doesn't need anything else with it.
Mm-hmm. Other than a willing palate.
So between that and the gin, those have been my nightcaps, in the evening with a cigar. And I've been smoking a lot of the Drew Estate Maduro 10th anniversaries.
Mm-hmm.
Been going through those a lot with it. I am planning to go to the range sometime this week or next week.
Oh, let me know.
Finally.
Let me know.
And then, other than that, July's a free month for me. I'm not really, other than working and drinking and smoking and shooting, that's all I'm really planning on doing.
That sounds like the life.
So hopefully we'll be able to get together. I know Steve's schedule's a little more hectic than ours, because he's got 2 jobs. But hopefully we can get together and go to the range and have a little therapy.
Nothing better than getting the gun off.
Yeah, that's what she said.
It's a show when he's making comments like that.
Yeah. Speaking of getting the gun off, I'm going to give a negative shout out
Negative shout out.
to the Supreme Court in this country,
I thought they were supposed to be for people.
who on Friday issued a decision in a New York case saying that the right to bear arms, while not covered in the Constitution in terms of carrying it, should be is not a states' rights issue, but is a federal issue. But then turned around yesterday and said a woman's right to choose is not a federal issue and is only a states' rights issue, which is completely antithetical. It's the first time in history the Supreme Court has taken an individual right that they ratified 50 years ago with Roe v. Wade and taking it back. So,
and I think people don't understand
and,
the gravity of that
no,
decision,
no,
because with that decision comes every other decision under it
yeah,
that has been changed.
yeah, and in countries where they've rolled back the access to a woman's right to choose, it has not stopped abortion.
Yeah.
What it has done is it increased the mortality rate because women will now look to alternative methods that are not as safe to get this procedure done if they want to.
Well, I will say a shout out to Dick's Sporting Goods. They're one of the first ones that came out and said they are going to cover up to $4,000 expenses for any one of their employees who has to fly to a state. So their airfare, their accommodations, and the extra procedure costs, along with like Disney said it. A lot of other huge companies have come out and said we are going to give time off. We are going to help with these situations because um, it's one thing to say, you know, you can't abort a fetus, but it's another thing to say that as a product of rape and all these other things, that you still can't. That's not a good enough excuse
Yeah,
to bring a child into this world.
yeah. There's 400,000 children in foster care right now.
Not to mention, let's bring to like the situation that we are still in a pandemic. Gas is $5 plus a gallon for regular gas. We don't have enough baby formula for the babies who are being born now.
No,
Much less food, and the price of food has gone up so much. Eggs have doubled in price. Milk has doubled. Like a lot of staple items that we use to feed ourselves, but also to nourish babies and young children, has doubled or tripled in price in the past 2 years.
yeah, it affects poor people the most.
It's gotten more expensive to take care of a child, and then, my question is, so once you do this, what's the next step? Is it now to dismantle the welfare system? What else happens as a result of this decision?
Clarence Thomas himself said yesterday, we need to take a look at the constitutional provision, the allowing same-sex marriage now. They want to roll that back.
It's
So
just,
it's just set in motion.
and it's crazy because
They all better have serious protection.
we tout ourselves as the land of the free, the place where you can go to live out your true self and be your true self, and to make any decision that you want to make, as long as it's not harming someone else.
Yeah,
That you're free to do so. You're
Yeah.
free to make your own choices
This-
about your own life. And now we're saying, oh, by the way, you can't.
yeah. This decision is also based on the religious thought that conception starts in the womb. Okay, but a lot of people in this country are not Christian.
Well,
So you are not considering the if we have life, liberty, and pursue happiness, then that should extend to a woman's uterus and her desire to make that decision for herself. There was a case in Oklahoma where a woman was 16, raped by a 30-year-old, and the courts ruled that the rapist should get custody of this child and that the woman should pay child support. It was just reversed on Friday, but these are the type of things that are a byproduct of this. You can't arbitrarily make these kind of decisions, to your point, without dealing with the cascading effects of what decisions like this entail. And negative shout out goes to Mitch McConnell, who
double
blocked
down, the jackass.
who blocked the Merrick Garland uh, uh, blocked the Merrick Garland appointment by then President Obama, and negative shout out to Trump, who said when he was campaigning that he was going to appoint justices who would reverse Roe v. Wade. And the three that he appointed did, and then you already had Alito and Thomas who were against it anyway.
5-9.
Yep. So now you got a 6-3 far right majority taking these rights away. And historically, since Roe v. Wade, 60% of the country has been in favor of a woman's right to choose. 1 in 4 women in this country have had an abortion, and the majority of the women who have abortions already have other kids. So, and they're making these decisions based on economics, they're based on health. So, and if you want to talk the spiritual aspect of it, that's for God to sort out.
But you can't make. That's the problem. You can't. The government is built on the concept of church and state being separate. So how can you make a law that is completely influenced by a church?
Yeah,
Because you got to remember, America, and I know that people say being American is being a Christian. As a Christian person, America is not just Christian.
It is not.
It is full of people who don't believe in a lot of things. I mean, I'm not going to say that go directly to if you're Jewish or if you're a Muslim. I mean, there's a large percentage of people in this country that don't believe in anything.
Right.
What about
them?
What about
atheists?
atheists? Yeah,
Because it's not like Roe versus Wade being in power would change those religious people's right or choice to do whatever they want to do. But it does, repealing it does make other people who don't believe in those concepts make a choice or have to do something or deal with something that they didn't sign up for. And you can't say you're home of the brave and the free, and then you make laws or you try to press things that suppresses people's right to be whatever they choose to be.
yeah.
I mean that's just fundamentally, to me, it's fundamentally wrong. And I mean, I'm not, and I wouldn't say that based on what my personal opinion is or what I would or wouldn't do. It's just solely based on the fact that I know the same people that live in the country that I live in don't always share the same ideas that I have.
Yeah.
And if they don't affect me, I can't stop them from doing those things.
Yeah.
Drinking is illegal in the religious mindset of a lot of people, but you're not turning over liquor. I mean, these are philosophies you have to remember. There's a lot of things that the American government does every day that are sins that we are not going to stop them. We're not going to stop people from casting war, killing people, for the pursuit of a kingdom that is not God's kingdom.
And Clarence Thomas had the nerve to say that abortion was not covered in the Constitution. Neither was interracial marriage. And he's in an interracial marriage. Neither was a lot of things that had to be changed, like a woman's right to vote.
Well, that's like even my dad told me. Like I grew up in a strong Catholic household, and I had a talk with my dad. I think when I got confirmed in church at 14, and the biggest thing that he told me was everything that the church says. You got to remember that these rules and these standards were made a long time ago. Some of the things that were acceptable back then are not necessarily the way that the world works today. So although, yes, I'm still Catholic, I still practice, there are rules and decisions that, as a devout Catholic, I'll say, I just I don't agree with, and therefore I don't live my life that way. I mean, if that's the case, then when are we going to go to the point of outlawing and banning premarital sex? I mean, it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
You're really going to the point of trying to control a whole country and a whole people. And America has fought against that since its inception. The control of one person throwing their will or their thoughts onto another or a group of individuals or people has always been what we fought against. That was the principle of this country. Like, we don't want to be ruled by someone who doesn't understand our ideals, our lifestyles.
Yeah.
And now, 50 years after this was passed, we're going backwards. And we're going backwards in so many things in this country. I mean, even, let's just go to crime.
Yeah. You want to have all these kids born, but you don't want to provide them with the financial and educational services. Shit, you can't even protect them in a classroom in Uvalde, Texas.
But we're not going to stress the gun issue. We're going to stress the abortion issue.
If that's the case, you can say masturbation is illegal because
Exactly.
you're killing kids. So where does it end?
Well, depending on what denomination and what kind of Christian you are, masturbating is a sin. So it could be illegal. Contraception is a sin to some people. It could be illegal.
Yeah.
Plan B could be is considered a sin to some people, and that could be illegal. So
Well,
you get in that role of where these are things where you line up and you can say you don't have a right to do that necessarily.
And that's where you're going to see. And to me, I think that's where the biggest push is going to come from. Has to be the pharmaceutical companies, because as we all know, they make a lot of the decisions that go around this country.
I don't see it lasting.
I mean, if you think about it,
It's going to be
let's just look at diabetes. Diabetes is the number one morbidity in the United States, right? You can alter your diet.
Sugars everywhere.
You can take natural supplements that are not pharmaceutical supplements that can completely reverse diabetes. Berberine, cinnamon, there's a ton of natural products and roots and things like that that you can get in any grocery store that combat these things. But these products are, let's say, $10 or $20 a bottle. But if you want to take a pharmaceutical like Glucophage or metformin or glipizide, these things are free, or they're at a cheaper cost, to the consumer, because the government's subsidizing that, and they're paying these pharmaceutical companies, and in turn, these people who are subsidizing and saying yes, this is good, they're getting a kickback. They're getting money in their pockets to keep people sick, because a lot of these pharmaceuticals, they're not giving you a dosage of medication that's going to completely eradicate the illness you have. They're giving you a dosage that is going to maintain a better lifestyle. So you're still going to be diabetic. You're still going to have high blood pressure. You're still going to have high cholesterol. But it's going to be more manageable, where if we gave you a medication that could completely eradicate it, and it can help you lower your levels and be healthier, have a better quality of life, and realistically, it's cheaper than these pharmaceutical drugs in the long run, why not do it? And it's because we have based our whole being on being a capitalist society, and everybody out for making as much money as they can personally. And in doing that, you're killing people.
Absolutely.
But then it goes to, well, if they don't want to have these issues, then they shouldn't eat these foods, or they shouldn't eat these things. Again.
But you're not going to go after them.
Right.
You're not even going to make a deal over the fact that they're going to give you poison that doesn't really work for you, and they put you in this predicament. That's even as it's not, and it's one thing when you say one person is making the decision, but you have a group of people who know this information, and they are purposely choosing to do the wrong thing actively. It's not an accident. It's not that they don't know.
Look at the lady who was in charge of the EpiPens. EpiPens without insurance are $1,500 to $2,000 for a set. Okay? This is a life-saving drug. A life-saving thing.
A necessity for people.
Yeah, for me, like I'm definitely allergic to wasps and stuff like that. I have to carry EpiPens everywhere I go. If I get stung, I've got 10 minutes. And within that 10 minutes, if I don't get epinephrine, or if I'm not in the hospital, I'm done. I'm toast. But again.
But then that goes back to that whole argument about this is why there should be some sort of a universal healthcare system in this country.
It'll never happen.
I believe there should be. Harry Truman was the first president, a Republican, who first floated this idea.
It can't happen because, as I said before,
that's the only way I can see them being okay with that.
Run our government.
Yeah, that's the only way I can see them saying. Because I'm not going to say that I don't think outlawing it could ever be a fair thing. If we created a society in this country where people got all the health care that they needed and they didn't have to worry about it, they got all the psychological treatment that they needed and they didn't have to worry about it, and they were put in an environment where they were able to cultivate and be better people, then sure. I mean, even if you wanted to say, hey, you had to have X amount, you had to have these bullet lines of things before you could have a child, it's kind of weird. I could see how that people could take that the wrong way. But if you're put in an environment where you can make a better choice, then sure, because you've given people all the fundamentals they need to be able to be great parents. And when the time comes and they fulfill the requirements and they can be a parent, then sure, I could go with that.
Yeah.
But you put people in an environment where they live in one of the richest countries in the world with the worst healthcare in the world, and the vast majority of them, even if they have insurance, they're underinsured.
Absolutely.
And even if you have insurance, it doesn't mean you can afford to go get
You still
yourself
can
done.
because you still have
can.
deductibles. Like you think about it,
This will
you've
not
got
affect.
deductibles of $500 to $2,000 for an individual, not for a family, for an individual. So it's like you look at it, and I'm in healthcare. So when you look at it from that perspective, if it's not the free once a year physical or things like that that I don't have to pay for, why am I doing it?
Yeah, this is a class issue because the reality is people with money will always find a way to get abortions when they need it because they've got the resources. Other people it's going to be a lot more difficult. And it's funny how a lot of these states that are putting these laws in place to stop abortions are states where they've got the worst education systems, they've got the worst healthcare systems, they've got the worst social services systems. So now you want to force more children to be born under these conditions. That's not fair to them.
Where the parents know that they can't afford to have another child or take care of another child, so they take the option of not having that child.
Yeah.
And you're saying, no, you don't have that choice anymore.
Yeah. Not to mention the fact that there are going to be situations after 15 weeks or within 15 weeks where it's going to present a risk to the woman carrying the child, or it's going to present a risk to the
or the child is going to be born with a major defect,
which is a whole different set of
that now puts
economic challenges.
Right, but that now puts the parent out of work because they have to take care of a very, very, very sick child. It costs the taxpayers more money because now this child has to get all of this medical treatment and care via Medicare, Medicaid, which is completely taxpayer, funded. So now we're taking more money out of the pockets of people who are working in order to take care of somebody who is unable to work. And it's not that they don't want to work; they just can't because they don't have the means to work and take care of this sick child. I have a friend who, her son is, I want to say 8 or 9 right now, and he was born. He doesn't talk. He can't really walk without a walker. This kid is, for all intents and purposes, this is going to be her child for the rest of her life. Like, this kid is never going to be able to do anything on their own. And it was one of those things that, of course, she had the choice, and she made the choice to still, have the child because she was connected to her child, which is fine. But then you go to the other side of people saying, well, why would you bring a child into this world that you can't take care of? And it's not that they can't, but it's because, even for myself, like, if I wasn't a vet, in order to get health insurance for my kids, it's, 25% of my bi-weekly paycheck for health insurance. $750 every 2 weeks. $1,500 a month for health care. And this isn't top tier. So where is all this money going? And inherently, my kids don't get sick because I give them the natural remedies they need. I give them good food. I make sure they exercise and things like that. But what happens to the people who can't afford to have insurance and still have healthy food?
Then
what do you do?
Yeah.
Do you want to feed them, or do you want to have them go to the hospital if they need to? Because there's a lot of people in that predicament.
Yeah.
So it's a mess on so many levels.
And then you have the uneducated part of it, where you have people who don't have the best education or the best background. They have no knowledge of health. They don't have any family members or friends who can even give them any advice as to whether, yes, you should take your kids to the doctor, or no, just let them buy that. Like, there's a lot of that too.
Yeah.
Where, because people just don't know the basics because they're not taught. They don't know when to take their child, and then by the time they do take them, sometimes it's too late. And now they've got a disease or dysfunction that can't be changed and can't be reversed. when it could have been prevented 6 months or a year ago if they've just gone to the doctor. And you can't just blame it on the parents. You have to blame it on the entire medical system, because we don't always tell the parents, oh, well, be careful of this, look out for that. You don't educate the parents on everything. So if they don't know what to look for, how can they know when it's time to bring their kid in?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So,
Yeah, it was a sad day in history yesterday. I really believe so. I mean, but like one of my friends on Facebook said, and I'm going to say the same thing. If you need to go camping in another state and you need a ride, call.
yeah. And a lot of these states are putting laws in effect that said if you help somebody trying to get a procedure done, you can be prosecuted. That's absolutely ridiculous.
I've heard that some, I don't know if this to be the truth, but I've heard that some states will prosecute you if you do it in another state.
Yeah. Absolutely ridiculous.
Well, and then there are a lot of companies who are also saying that they're going to pay the legal fees if their employees go to another state and they do return.
Yep.
And
Microsoft.
the state decides to try to prosecute them, they're going to pay the legal fees to fight that case. Because again, it's a liberty. It is a freedom.
Yep.
You know, if you're still not, you still haven't cracked down enough on cigarette smoking and things like that. You still haven't cracked down on gun reform and who should be able to buy a gun. I mean, hell, to this day, you can be 18 years old and sign up to join the military, but you have to be 21 to buy a cigarette or alcohol. Where's the logic?
There is none.
You can lay your life down for your country, but you can't choose to drink alcohol or to smoke a cigarette or a cigar.
Dude, that's a stupid law.
It's insane.
That makes zero sense. You can't get drunk, but you can get shot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That just makes no sense.
Yeah.
And here's like another. This is a conversation I had with one of my coworkers when we were talking about age restriction, because I'm kind of bitter. I have a bittersweet feeling about restrictions in regards to people who are 18, because their push is to try to raise the age to purchase long guns, and I was like, is it crazy that is being 18 too young to do something, or is it something that innately about how we raise 18-year-olds in America that they're not able to do anything?
We don't. So here's a difference, Stephen. When me and you were raised, we were raised to know right and wrong. We were raised with morals. Again, this directly goes to parents. If you do not instill morals and ethical values into your child as they're growing up, they're going to be assholes. They're going to not give a fuck about anybody else but themselves. They're going to be selfish. They're going to hurt people. And that goes directly to the point of, you look at it and you say, even just abortion, let's go there. Like, oh, you can't choose anymore. All right, but you realize that, let's look at these communist countries who say you can only have one child. How long have we been talking shit about that and saying, oh, that's fucked up. You're controlling their right to have a child or have as many kids as they want. And guess what? We are now that country.
We are.
We have been screaming that.
And
about the Chinese.
What I find hilarious about that is the people who are so gung-ho about fighting communism and socialist ideology are freaking conservatives.
And they're pushing the same ideology, but with a twist.
Yeah,
they're trying to make it sound like, oh, we're looking out for you. No, you're not.
And that's kind of like, and I think that's kind of like my biggest problem. That's the thing I contemplate as I get closer to the point that I'm going to start having kids. And it's that, like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing as Americans where we can't even let our kids do anything? Like, you go to Japan or you go to Europe and kids know how to function. Like, they come out of this world, they leave high school already fully capable of really being a real adult. Like, they can go and pay bills.
They're living on their own at 18.
But they lived a life all the way from when they were adolescent all the way through to this time frame where they've been expected to know things and do things on their own and actually just go out there and figure it out. And they've been cultivated in an environment where they function on their own. But for whatever reason, you take an 18 or 19-year-old here in this country, they can't do nothing. And it was crazy too because I watched this one show um, that I really like. It's on Netflix. It's called Old Enough, and it's about these kids in Japan that go shopping on their own. Like they send them out, and they're toddlers. These are like 2 and 3 year olds. Like pretty much, they could walk. They're out there going to a grocery store. And I mean, I get it because we kind of have this spooky, scary world in America where you're afraid to put a kid out there in society to go shopping because who knows what they're going to do with them. But even that in itself tells you, what are we doing? Well, we couldn't. What are we doing?
Where a child's not
couldn't
safe.
say, yo,
Yeah.
can you go to the store, go get me this real quick, and expect them to come back and nothing happened to them. Or even if they were in a world where nothing would happen to them, you ain't got enough ability to let them go and figure things out and run into problems. And that's the one thing I learned
They
a lot
have to fail.
about Asian culture. The kids just expected to figure it out.
Yep.
They teach them as much as they can, but they let them fail. They let them
You
get
have to make your
frustrated.
mistakes because you have to learn. That's how you learn.
It's better to learn when you're young and to get frustrated then than to wait till you're 21 years old and the girl said no and you didn't understand what no meant, or did not understand how to do anything right, or to be, hey, you know what? We're all having a good time. Let's just chill out. Everybody said, these people don't want us on our property. We could just leave. Let's just leave and let everything go. Just simple things. Being able to, what we call in the military, police yourself.
Yeah.
And that seems to be a weird ideology where you're like, well, why would an 18-year-old do this? Well, what you said, they have no empathy. They don't take no responsibility for nothing. And then they just don't know how to function without somebody telling them what they need to do. Just do it. You know it needs to be done. Just do it. Be part of the solution. Stop being part of the problem. Because like I said, everything that's happened probably in the last 6 months is literally like, it's an eye opener to how much we got to be feeling somehow, bro. Like we doing something wrong. Because this shit,
to me, it's not even a question of are we. It's like coming to the realization that yes, we are, and then the question is, what do we do to fix it? Period. Like that. It's not even a question of, well, are we really failing, or are our kids behind? No, they definitely are. Yes, we are failing them.
way behind.
What do we do now to fix this so that the next generation that's coming up has the morals and the values that we had growing up?
Because even when I was talking to him about guns, because he's a military guy, but he's very like liberal in the ideology of how he feels about gun rights. And I was like, he was talking about open carry, and I was like, well, in a rural area like where I grew up in, open carry has a purpose to it. If you're out in the middle of nowhere doing something, animals, you don't want to have to be like, well, let me go put my gun up. You got that gun right there, because a coyote could come and eat some of your livestock, or something can happen where you need your firearm.
You don't need to walk down in an urban, not even an urban, in a downtown area.
In an urban, just what you just said, an urban area. Having open carrying as a person who is not law enforcement has no purpose in life, unless you are protecting your property as a shop owner, or if you go in a gun shop. Most guys in a gun shop got it open out there,
and that's because they have to.
That's it.
Yeah.
There really is no reason. If you are doing it, it may sound mean and rude, but you're a douchebag. That's just my opinion. That's always been my opinion about it.
You're right.
Now you have a right to do it, but it's kind of weird.
So just saying. And my thing that I love is, like people say, because I have my CCW, and I'm like, I don't want you to know that I have it.
That's my dad said. If you got it out and something happened, you're the first target.
Yep.
Why be that?
You're putting
Great
yourself
man.
out there.
That anybody that knows anything about security, when you don't have to stand out, you're a great man, and try to be as much of one as you can. Why have a gun out?
You want to be that invisible person in the room. You always want to be.
I don't really like that. I ain't never been a fan of it. I've always thought it was weird when I seen guys do it. I mean, it's like, that's your right, but on a personal level, you're weird.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not telling anybody that you shouldn't be able to do it. I'm just saying you're weird for doing this right here.
But then it also goes to the fact that you can't defend yourself with your two hands. That's my biggest thing.
Yeah.
Like above everything else.
Like I'm like, what did he say on Snowfall? You could teach a boy how to squabble.
Yeah, that's it. Like you can't, because at the end of the day, if it comes down to it, and there are no guns, no knives, how do you defend yourself?
You win some,
you lose some.
Yeah,
but you live to fight another
you
day.
live to fight another day. And sometimes taking an ass whooping puts you in
It humbles you.
It's good.
humbles you.
It humbles you.
And,
You leave.
and you realize, all right, I gotta up my game.
And not even sometimes not even the up in your game. It's like, damn, I gotta chill the fuck out.
Let you know what
Because I'm
gravity
out here just wilding out for no reason. Like,
you gotta think about it too. Most of the time, they do pull out a gun, whatever it is, ain't even that deep anyway.
No,
And if you got a black eye, you might sit and think about it for a second. As long as nobody's really clowning you like that, it's like, okay, you know what? I was bugging.
A black eye will heal, but death is permanent.
And then here's the other thing: you have to deal with that for the rest of your life.
Forever.
You have to deal with the fact that you've taken somebody's life.
You don't want
Like, and let me tell you, as a member of the military, you don't want that in your life. That is not something that ever goes away. Ever. I don't care if you're 20, 30, 50, 90, 100. You talk to any vet who's had to do that, and they will tell you that shit haunts them to this day. And it's not that it's so bad that they can't function, but it stops their day.
It's always there. Yeah.
Something's going to remind you, and it's going to put you in a place of depression or negativity, and you're going to start to feel bad. And regardless of the reason you did it, whether it was just because or whether it was because you had to protect yourself, whatever the reason is, it will affect you.
Killing somebody should be hard. It should be hard.
That should be
it
something
always
that
should be the
last resort.
hurts you. If you don't hurt you in your gut, you got problems. It should never feel good. Never. It might be, even if it's somebody that's a psychopath, it should feel bad. You should probably feel some kind of relief that you took yourself out of that dangerous situation, maybe, but it should never feel remorse. You should still have remorse. You always got to respect the dead. I mean, and when you kill somebody, like you said,
and it's not even, I don't even go to, I'll take it further. It's not even respecting the dead, it's respecting life.
Yeah.
Period.
And that comes with self-respect.
Because you can't, that's one thing you can't take back.
No.
That's why I don't really like the one thing I see on the news all the time. I hate when people try to be binary in regards to people good and bad and this and that, because
it's situation, man.
Yes.
Crime and some of the things people do is always situational. It's never just people just want to do this shit.
Yeah, people, I think the biggest thing is people aren't inherently bad.
No, not at all.
No. But I think that what happens is, even if you put the most moral person in a bad situation, the decisions that they make are going to hurt somebody eventually.
They're going to be questionable as hell.
Because it literally comes down to that fight or flight. And it's, will I live today or will I die today? And when they're put in that situation, more than likely they're going to live, but somebody else isn't. And so, like, just respecting, and I say this all the time, like, just basic respect for human life and people. If you don't like somebody, walk away.
That is always an option too.
If you can't talk
it out, or you feel yourself getting that, and I've been in that situation. Y'all seen me. Yeah. I've been in that situation many times where I'm to the point where, like, man, I want to put my hands on this motherfucker. But guess what? At the end of the day, I got way too much to live for. I got way too many people depending on.
Way too much to fucking lose.
Yeah.
Right. That's what people don't understand.
And way too many positive things to look forward to in your future.
And you sit back and when you walk away from that situation and you reflect. Like, the biggest thing for me is, anytime I get that angry, the first thing I think about is my kids. Because if that doesn't ground you to reality, then something's wrong with you. If you don't think about the fact that if I do this, how does it affect my kids? How does it affect my future? How does it affect my livelihood? Then what the fuck are you doing with your life? You can't just live for yourself and in the moment. You always have to be 10 steps ahead and thinking about the future. And if you're not thinking about the future, you're never going to make it anywhere.
So on that note, America, get it together. This is the last Saturday of June.
July is next.
We'll catch you on the rebound.
4th of July.
The ATF radio show live at Executive Cigar and Lounge in Sanford, Florida. This is yours truly, Art Man Forever.
AKA the Cigar Savage.
AKA the Cigar Savage. Along with Chair 4 Steve.
AKA
That'd be
Steve
me.
M. Stevens World.
And of course,
The Cigar Snob.
himself in the flesh.
And as always, drink well,
Smoke well.
and aim center mass. Oh, and on this last Saturday, don't forget to tap that ass.
Always.
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 I was doing that on two in the pink, one in the stink.
And tap
It's that day.
and if you and tap it twice if you have to.
Have a good one, my friends. We'll see you next week.
Be safe.